Hi everyone, it's Danielle with Northlawn Flower Farms. Today I want to share with you how to grow ranunculus. And when you should plant ranunculus is dependent on what zone you're in and what kind of growing conditions you're using. So those of us that are in zone 7 or warmer, or those people in zone 6 that have a high tunnel can generally plant their corms out in the fall. But for those of us in colder climates, we need to usually do a very early spring planting. I'm here in zone 6B, south central Pennsylvania, where the winters are long, cold, and harsh, but the summers are hot and humid. So I really find that I need to do an early spring planting since I don't have a high tunnel. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. And I think it's really important to note that more than any other flower that I can think of, ranunculus are a little bit more tricky. But I think it's really just about getting out there and doing it. Especially with ranunculus, there's just nothing like experience and experiencing them in your particular zone on your property. So I'm also going to link to some other farmers in different zones much colder than mine, zones in the same zone as myself that use a high tunnel, and also zones warmer, so that you can really find a farmer that's close to you. And I would really recommend getting your information from them. If you're in a zone 9 or a zone 4 and watching this video, you might almost want to just skip over it and look in the description section. I really want to be helpful here, and there's really just so many variable things when it comes to climate that influence having success with ranunculus. So for now, let's get started on how to grow these guys in very early spring in zone 6B without a high tunnel. In my zone, corms should be planted out approximately 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost. Before planting, I soak and pre-sprout to give them a head start. This should be done 2 weeks before planting out. When you purchase ranunculus corms, they will be shipped to you in a dry and dormant state. The corms can be stored dry, at room temperature, and out of direct sunlight for several months. No special treatment is necessary. Plan to start the soaking and pre-sprouting process 2 weeks before you plan to plant them out into the garden. Place the corms in a bucket of room temperature water and soak them for 4 hours. The water temperature should never exceed 55 degrees Fahrenheit. I place mine in old daffodil bags so they're easy to lift out of the bucket. Change the water every hour to avoid the buildup of bacteria. You can also use a fish pump to aerate the water, or leave a gentle stream of water running in the bucket for the 4 hours. I find simply dumping the water every hour works just fine. Once the corms are soaked, it is time to pre-sprout them. Pre-sprouting will result in blooms about 3 weeks earlier and will help us weed out any dud corms. Fill a planting tray that has no holes with lightly moistened high-quality potting mix to the depth of about 1 to 2 inches. It is very important that the soil is not wet, just slightly moistened. Place the corms with the tuberous fingers pointing down into the medium. They can be placed very close together. We're not growing them in this tray, just pre-sprouting them. Cover the corms with a light layer of lightly moistened potting soil. Once again, not wet, just lightly moistened. I'm stressing this point because I have personally lost many corms to the medium being too wet. In fact, I even took a class on ranunculus where I could tell that the medium was way too wet. Naturally, those corms molded within a week. At this point, some people will tell you to cover the tray with a dome. I personally found this problematic, so I do not cover the tray at all. However, find what works best for you. Place the tray in an area that stays dark and cool with an ideal temperature of 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The soil should stay slightly moist during this time, never wet and not bone dry. I use both our unheated basement and a shower in a spare bathroom where the heat is turned off and the lights are kept off. If you have a basement with high humidity like I do, you may want to try a few different places until you find the place that's best for you. I have had corms mold in the basement when the dehumidifier is not running. Leave the tray in this cool, dark area for approximately 2 weeks. Check them every day or so for any signs of rot or mold and discard any corms that are moldy or rotten immediately. When you find the ideal spot and moisture level, this problem will substantially subside. Have patience with yourself and the corms as you learn. Some loss is expected, especially when you're first starting out. Give yourself grace and try again. Don't expect to be a master overnight. Rather, enjoy the journey. I still consider myself an avid student of Ranunculus. I'm always learning and adapting. Once about 2 weeks have passed, you will see that the corms have developed roots and have begun to sprout. This is the right time to plant them out in the garden. Once again, try to correlate your pre-sprout with the time you want them to go out into the garden so that you're not trying to hold over corms that are ready to go outside. Ranunculus need full sun and well-draining soil. The plants can take cold ground and cold temperatures, but the corms should never be allowed to freeze. Before planting, incorporate a good 2 to 3 inches of compost into the bed. Plant the corms 2 inches deep and about 9 inches apart. I have heard some growers push the spacing to 6 inches apart. However, I have never personally tried this. Next, I hoop and cover my plants with a frost cloth. I use Agribon 30 and metal hoops that were bent by a fellow farmer. I use metal staples to secure the cloth to the ground. Ranunculus open in the day and close at night. Harvest ranunculus after they have opened and closed a few times. If the center bud feels hard, wait and check it the next day. It should feel squishy like a marshmallow. Harvest it in the early morning. You can cut them more open. They'll just have a shorter vase life if you do. You can expect a vase life of 10 days. Once the weather warms up, you will see the ranunculus start to go dormant. Don't worry, this is normal. Ranunculus do not like long, hot days and will stop producing when temperatures are consistently in the 70s. Well guys, I sure hope that was helpful, and just once again remember, I'm here in zone 6B with very cold winters, hot humid summers, and growing without a high tunnel, and that's why I'm planting in this manner. And I've failed multiple times, my friends. I've lost corms to rot, mold, disease. They just seem to disappear and never come up. But I feel like I finally landed on something that works for me. So don't get discouraged if you try ranunculus and they don't work out, or they don't all work out. I always expect to lose some corms. Always, no matter how many years I go on doing this. It's just about learning what's right for you. And so you might need to tweak this information a bit to make it right for you in your zone. But I hope it gives you at least a framework of where to begin. Well guys, I'm getting pretty cold out here, so I'm gonna go in. It's actually supposed to snow tonight. Can you believe it? I sure can. I'm ready for spring. Well, I want to wish you a great evening. Happy gardening. Bye.